Hello YouTube, my name is Adze, and today we are watching the Backlogs video, How to Beat Dark Souls 1 with Only Fist Weapons. This is a bit of an unusual reaction for this particular channel. However, this is an interesting one for me because I do like the Backlogs quite a bit. I've watched a bunch of his videos in the past. And also, a little bit of those who have ever watched the now dead second channel, but I have plans for that, don't worry about it. But I used to make some Dark Souls videos on there. Dark Souls used to be a bit of a hyperfixation of mine. I absolutely love this game. I've probably played through it like 15 to 20 times. And killing all bosses, by the way. Like, so I'm not just kind of blitzing through the main story. I really played the fuck out of this game. Absolutely love it to death. It spawned my love of Souls-likes. This is a game that has a very special place in my heart. And, you know, these challenge runs are always fun to watch. And there are some pretty cool fist weapons in Dark Souls 1. But, so, I do like the Backlogs content. And I'm actually also... I feel like I, in particular, will have a lot to add at certain points. Even though I haven't played Dark Souls in a hot minute, I do know a lot about the game. So, you know, we'll see how this goes. So, for those watching in the stream right now, I'll be leaving a link in the stream chat. For those watching in the highlights channel, I'll be leaving a link in the description. Please do go support the original creator, support the original video. It's always very much appreciated here. Let's get to it. Just a quick reminder that you're watching the highlights channel right now. If you want to catch these streams live or want to check out my more high-effort analytical content, consider checking out the main channel linked in the description.
Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Hope you're doing well.
I like the name
Today,
Fisty McGee.
we're going back in time 4 years. Back to the very first Dark Souls challenge run I ever did. Look at this sweet boy. Look how innocent he is. How uncoordinated.
Okay.
How suboptimal. And to think that I considered myself good at Dark Souls. How far we've come in 4 short years.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed is a lot of these people who do the challenge runs, which, and again, back when I was watching a lot of Dark Souls content, you know, the Backlogs wasn't the only channel I was watching. I know I was also watching a lot of Press Continue. It's interesting to see how much better these people get over time playing Dark Souls just because they keep doing challenge run after challenge run. Hell, even my own Dark Souls challenge run series, which, again, I never ended up finishing that, and I probably never will, but I noticed even in the handful of runs I did, I was getting better each time. I was starting to do a few more, like, almost like speedrunning skips. You do get better as you do these things, so with how many that the Backlogs has done, he's gotten a lot better than he used to be.
Cringe thumbnails, font choices, and voiceovers aside, this run was a complete mess. And now, with several years of challenge running and further research under my belt, it's time we come full circle and show the world how much we've improved. Can you beat Dark Souls 1 with only fist weapons? You sure can. Now let me show you how.
But first, a word from today's sponsor.
Okay, and I will, of course, let the ad play just out of respect for the original creator, but do be aware that I am not familiar with this. I don't know if it's a product or a service, which goes to show how unfamiliar with it I am, but this is not my endorsement, this is his. I don't know anything about it, so I can't speak on it.
Wand. Do you struggle to squeeze game time into your busy schedule? Me too. And it's literally my job sometimes. I mean, look at this. How am I supposed to play all these games? I could play one game a day and not be done for years. And that's just game quantity.
Yep.
God help you when you actually open one of them. How am I supposed to find 500 hours to play through Terraria in its entirety? Oh, actually don't look at that. Well, fret not, my fellow backloggers. There's hope.
Again,
gone are the
relatable.
days of editing.
I mean, I haven't played Terraria specifically, but like, I have put ungodly amounts of time into a couple of different video games.
INI and JSON files, downloading suspicious folders onto your computer, or pretending that you understand how save editing works. Because with Wand, all you need to do is turn on your game, press Alt-W to open Wand's overlay, and start adjusting your experience instantly. Want to experience the story of Baldur's Gate 3 but don't have more than 30 minutes a night? Easy fix. Just press Alt and W and make it so that you get double XP or maximum companion approval.
Okay, so it's like a cheat
Tired
engine.
of everyone in Stardew Valley running away from your love and affection? Stop them in their tracks. And you know what? Give yourself unlimited energy to work on your farm while you're at it. They're not going anywhere. You got time. Want to play Silksong but your brain is dumb and won't let you play a series out of order? No worries. Just turn on Hollow Knight and give yourself unlimited geo to eliminate all that unnecessary grinding, then use the in-app map to find and keep track of all the items and bosses that you're missing.
Okay, so yeah, it basically is like an easier to use cheat engine. So, okay, I mean, again, this is not something I'm particularly interested in, but like, you know, if that's the way you want to play a game, as long as you're playing single player stuff like this. Don't do this kind of shit in multiplayer, but yeah, I don't really care if you want to do it. I just don't.
Wand also lets you test out any wacky idea you might have. For example, what if 6 from Little Nightmares had mad hops? Or what if Sekiro had a dedicated flamethrower weapon that didn't run out of ammo?
And actually, I will say, from a content creation perspective, if you're making videos like this, that actually probably is pretty useful, because I will say, back when I did my Dark Souls videos, the whole premise of them was that I had initially wanted to make a challenge run of one, single weapon challenge for every weapon in the game. That obviously never ended up actually coming to fruition, but I did get a handful of runs in. And what I would do is I would use Cheat Engine to replace the starting the broken sword, the sword hilt. I used a Cheat Engine to replace that with whatever weapon I was using, and to adjust my stats so that I could actually, to the minimum required to actually use the weapons. So yeah, I can see the utility of this from a content creation perspective, and not just a player perspective.
You can even embrace your inner Firebomb Academy scholar and turn on unlimited grenades in XCOM. Go on, do it. You won't.
Okay.
Whatever your single-player game of choice, Wand has got you covered.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button by accident. Don't worry about it. But yeah, like I was saying, it would be interesting to see if you could do a grenade-only run in XCOM, because you'd be destroying terrain, but also messing up the by destroying things with explosions. You would actually be destroying like loot, and I believe it would actually also destroy the bodies, so that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do the alien research, the autopsies on them. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been a long time since I've played XCOM, but that does seem like something that could be a real concern.
And even if you don't want to change the game itself, Wand offers several other resources to help you avoid burnout, like maps and guides. If that sounds appealing to you, use my link wand.gg/thebacklogs, or click the link in the description or pin comment down below to get Wand for free.
Okay, so yeah, that's interesting, because I actually, without giving away any details, I do have some plans to revive the gaming channel and to actually start like making more gaming videos. Again, the details of that are not really set in stone yet. That's at some point in the future. My plans are not fully realized at the moment, but I might have to look into potentially, I don't know if I'm going to use this particular service, but something to aid in that would actually be pretty useful. I'm going to have to look into that.
And play games your way.
I know, and again, while I can't personally endorse the service, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's necessarily even safe. But this is one, if you want to support the backlogs, this is one way you can do that. Again, of course, be aware of your own safety stuff. I assume he's done his own vetting and made sure that it is safe, but I don't know that for sure. But if you want to support him, this is one way to do it. To go to wand.gg/thebacklogs. Of course, we always appreciate the original creators here.
So, fist weapons. Suggested by several commenters on our last How to Beat video, these weapons are what I would call not good.
I will say, it is a shame that fist weapons are not that great in Dark Souls. I mean, some of them are okay, but based on when you get them versus when you again, just what you get and when you get them make them not super viable from a challenge running perspective, or just in general, just a general use perspective. Because, I mean, it's kind of like with sorceries in the game. Dark Bead is an amazing sorcery. Like, it really blasts through everything. But you get it, like, right in the deepest parts of the DLC. So it's not super useful for the most part, because you kind of already have to beat most of the hardest stuff to get there. So what's the point? I mean, unless you could always, of course, get it and then use it in a New Game Plus run, but the fist weapons kind of suffer from the same problems, except they are not like as good as something like Dark Bead. So, yeah. But I will say that's a shame, because I think they have my favorite backstab and riposte animations in the game. Like, again, he knocks them into their knees and then punches them in the face. That's fucking awesome.
Later iterations of the fisticuffs were massively improved, both in regards to their damage and their movesets, but in Dark Souls 1 they were pretty shit. There's only 4 fist weapons in the game, technically 5 if you
Look
include
at
your bare
that.
fists, and we'll cover their strengths and weaknesses as we go through the game, but if you're watching this video in hopes of finding a way to make only fist weapons a viable build, you might be a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
In regards to the run,
And honestly, I will say, part of the fun of challenge run videos are these single weapon videos or single weapon type videos. A lot of it is the enjoyment for me as a viewer is watching you try to make something that doesn't work.
itself, the biggest roadblock in the entire challenge will likely be the Asylum Demon.
Yeah.
Mainly because the only weapon at our disposal is our bare fists, which do a whopping 30 damage with a plunging attack, and 2 damage otherwise.
Yeah, that's one thing I was wondering is generally the challenge runs that I've seen do kind of work on just try to make it work until you get your weapon that you need, and just kind of you're stuck with either the short sword hilt or the fists. So I guess he is actually going to fight the Asylum Demon with the fists, which it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it is mostly an endurance challenge because the Asylum Demon has a pretty simple moveset. I mean, a big reason it's the first boss in the game, the tutorial boss, is because of how easy it is, where you're supposed to fight it before you really know how to play the game. Although it also has really low health, so that's a factor because you can kind of just brute force it with the starter weapon, even if you don't really know how to dodge his attacks.
You can throw a left jab as well, but it only does 1 damage and can't be chained into a flowing combo of any kind, so I wouldn't bother with that. Its main purpose is poise damage, and even that's pretty negligible on its own if you're bare fisting.
Okay.
But after 13 minutes of mashing the attack button a grand total of 393 times, the
Yeah.
Asylum Demon will eventually go down.
Yeah, and again, that's what I said. It is a okay. Well, I was also finding it kind of interesting that he actually went all the way around to get to that initial plunging attack to get the 30 damage for the first hit. Because honestly, if I was just kind of fighting it with the fists, I wouldn't even bother taking. Actually, wait. No, I think you do kind of have to go around to. Again, it's been a long time since I've played Dark Souls, but I think you actually do have to go around to get the Estus Flask. So never mind.
And if we do the rest of this run correctly, that's the longest fight we'll ever have again. Now, if you're just in it for the lulz and aren't taking yourself too seriously, you do have 2 more options available to you. The Pyromancy Flame, which is technically just your fist on fire, does a whopping 7 damage per swing.
Okay.
Hot damn, am I right? That said, that is 3.5 times more damage per swing, which means your fight should, in theory, be 3.5 times shorter. Just food for thought.
Yeah, that is something I was considering. I was thinking because, I mean, even if you're not going to use any of the pyromancy stuff, why wouldn't you start out with something that does a little bit more damage and technically fills the requirements of the challenge?
In that same vein, one could use the Cleric Talisman as a fist weapon as well, but this thing actually does less damage than your bare fist. Probably because you're essentially wrapping your fist in cloth. So, yeah, don't do that. Anyway, back to normal strategies, let's talk about your starting class. Funnily enough, any class will work fine so long as you take the Master Key. And the reasons for this are twofold.
Well, yeah, Master Key, in weird challenge runs like this, the Master Keys tends to be kind of a mandatory pickup because it lets you bypass some of the intended progression paths and get stuff you're, again, not necessarily not supposed to have early on in the game, but that the game is not necessarily designed around you having.
The first reason is because we will be making a mad dash to Andre from Havel's Tower.
Okay.
Just sprint your way through the Darkroot Basin, up to the Undead Parish, and with amazing chest ahead, we now have access to the first actual fist weapon of the game,
Okay.
the Cestus. Sold by our friend here for a measly 200 souls, the second reason you can pick any class you want is because of its requirements. Requiring 5 strength and 8 dexterity to wield, literally every single class in the game meets those requirements.
Okay.
So there's no wrong choice.
Yeah, because that was what I was wondering is what is the first fist weapon you're going to do? Because, again, it's been a long time since I played Dark Souls, so I don't really remember a lot of the details of stuff anymore. But I've never been that great at remembering where individual items are in general, at least individual weapons. So I wasn't actually sure where the first fist weapon of the game would be. Although I do find it very interesting that he's using the Master Key to get into the Darkwood Basin and kind of bypass the Taurus demon on the bridge that way. Which again makes sense. You wouldn't want to fight a boss more than the first boss with just your fists. So, but I don't think I've ever. I mean, I've personally never taken that particular skip because it's a lot of hassle for minimal gain, in my opinion. But in this particular context, it's very important.
There's better choices, but no wrong ones. If you want to optimize the hell out of your run, your best bet is to pick a class that has the most strength and dexterity possible, since the Cestus scales equally with both stats.
Yeah, still, it's not great scaling. I mean, C scaling's not terrible, but it's not great scaling. And I mean, and also just in general, I would imagine by the time you get through a decent portion of the game, you'll have enough souls to hit the soft cap anyway.
Personally like the warrior class, since it has the best of both worlds, and I'll be needing both stats to show off all the other weapons throughout the run. But spoiler alert, you'll want a class that has higher dexterity if you want the most damage output. More on that later. In any case, we've gone from 2 damage to 76 in the blink of an eye. Truly massive gains.
Yeah.
Granted, these gains aren't outputting significant damage anytime soon, even with backstab multipliers, but with fisticuffs now in hand, we can at the very least show off the primary power of the Cestus, its stagger potential.
Yeah, I was noticing that because, I mean, in general, the blunt weapons in the game do more poise damage than the sharp weapons, even though everybody knows of like things like the Zweihander being, kind of OP, or just really good in general, not necessarily overpowered. But yeah, things like fist weapons are gonna have a lot of stagger potential. So, but I mean, honestly, the damage it's doing is not terrible, especially combined with the ability to do as much poise damage as it does.
In later games, the fists are a monster in this regard, stun-locking enemies into oblivion despite their lesser damage. And in Dark Souls 1, it's no different. However, unlike the later games, the moveset in Dark Souls 1 leaves a lot to be desired. Your light attack is a simple punch and backhand attack, your strong attack is a straight punch forward, and your left hand is a weak jab and a parry.
Okay.
There's no way to two-hand fist weapons, and while their attack speed is quicker than most weapons, this is countered by the fact that their range is absolutely garbage. At this point in the run, you've got 2 options.
Yeah, makes sense.
You can start dumping souls into strength and dexterity, or you can save your souls and use them at Andre to upgrade the weapon itself. Personally, my vote is for option 2, considering the Cestus can break Taurus Demon's poise and doesn't really need any help doing it. But
Okay,
you
yeah,
do
that
you.
makes sense.
And after repeatedly punching the Taurus Demon in the groin, we can move right along.
Yeah, so I will say a lot of what is going to work best in any individual circumstance is going to depend on what the actual breakpoints are. Like, how much poise does it have? How much does it take to actually stagger an enemy? Because, can you actually keep an enemy stun-locked or stun-locked close enough to stun-locked to actually be able to kind of power through with just your raw damage output compared to, are you going to have to take this in a more, long-term type of strategy? Take it like you would like a more normal fight.
We make a quick stop at the Armored Pig Arena to pick up the basement key, and with that now in our possession, we can upgrade our Cestus to +5 and move along to the next big upgrade of our build. Oh, make sure you bitch slap the pig on the way down though. That's super important to the run.
Okay.
And after failing our veterinarian exam,
Okay. I was wondering. I didn't know if you could actually. I mean, I knew you can backstab the boar there because that's something I've done in my own runs a bunch of times. I didn't realize you actually just fisted its asshole when you're using the Kestis.
push forward to the lower undead burg, where we proceed to not go fight the Capra Demon,
Okay.
but rather take a hard right, making sure to disrespect all the enemies along the way. And with that done, we now have access to the female undead merchant. What up, girl? You got that fire paper for me? Ah, yeah, that's the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, babe.
The pine resin. Okay, yeah, I never really used a whole lot of the pine resin. Just because I don't know why I never did. I just it never was a real priority for me when I was playing. But come to think of it, if the fist weapons in general are going to have lower base damage, so proportionally, the pine resin probably is significant in how much your DPS output increases.
Let's talk.
Assuming it's not an enemy that's resistant to fire, which there are a number of bosses that are resistant. Like, I know Quelaag is not going to be very useful, but,
Talk resins. One of the consumables that I always forget exists due to their relatively high cost per use.
Yeah.
The charcoal pine resin takes our damage from an underwhelming 36 to a beautiful, breathtaking 59.
Okay.
I know. I'm impressed too.
Yeah, that's a
But in all
significant
seriousness,
increase.
we have to look at the situation objectively. For 500 souls, our damage almost doubled. And in fights where whittling down your enemy as quick as possible is desired, like the gargoyle fight, that could make or break a boss attempt. According to the wiki, the charcoal pine resin adds a flat 80 fire damage to our weapon for 60 seconds.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't remember that, but yeah, the fact that it adds flat damage and not like, percentage damage for a weapon like any kind of fist weapon, especially the cestus, which is low damage, but high attack speed, relatively low stamina cost, and high stagger potential. Yeah, flat damage is going to be where it's at.
Obviously, the enemy you're punching's fire defense comes into play, but at least we know where the damage is coming from now. Normally, applying this resin to such a fast weapon would be a huge boon, as this kind of consumable benefits faster weapons more than slower ones. More hits in a short amount of time means rapidly accumulating returns. But the gargoyles are actually one of the worst bosses to show this on, since they constantly dip and dodge around, their hitboxes aren't easy to hit with a fist weapon, and the fact that there's two of them means you can't get any sort of attack flow going.
Yeah, and that's a thing with multiple bosses in a single instance. It's going to be less of a back and forth and more of a like hit and run tactics. Unless you can just kind of overpower them, because the bell gargoyles have low health in general. So if you're actually like playing normally and using a good weapon, you'll kind of be able to blow through them. And if you know what you're doing, you can a lot of times actually like fuck one of them up before the other actually shows up while they're still in their intro animation. But in an instance like this, yeah, you kind of have to just kind of take your hits when you can and just manufacture openings. So yeah, you're not going to be able to really go all out.
Annoying, but not impossible. And with our 10,000 souls in our pocket, we've got a new mission. Depending on how much you've been scrimping and saving, you either have quite a bit of grinding ahead of you, or none at all. And once we get our souls up to 20,000, we can buy the Crest of Artorias from Andre, make our way into the Darkroot Forest, and carefully sprint past all of the Forest Covenant groupies.
I mean, if you're kind of done with, well, actually, no, you're not done with Andre at this point. So never mind, because you're still gonna have to give him the embers to upgrade stuff even more. So, because a lot of times in my runs, what I would do is once I would get kind of past the point where he was useful, usually once I kind of upgraded my stuff past the point of where he can actually continue upgrading, a lot of times instead of paying the 20,000 souls for the crest, I would just fucking kill him. And actually that would kind of be interesting because he fights with his fists as well. So that that would be thematically fitting in this run. But yeah, I get at this point, before you've upgraded past +5, you're gonna still want to keep him alive.
More carefully than that, please.
Ugh.
And after praying to the
These guys
Eternal
aren't
Cat, we now have access to our new best friend, Shiva of the East. Well, sort of. We do have a brief conversation with him here, but what we actually need to do is sprint on over to the back door of Blighttown and head down the elevator there.
Okay, because that is interesting. Because I haven't done a whole lot with this particular faction. The only time I've really done it is to de-aggro all the enemies there, because joining that faction will actually, or that covenant, I should say, will de-aggro everything there, which makes traversing that area suck a lot less. But also, I believe if you kill, if I remember correctly, you get a unique ring if you kill Shiva of the East. Is it the Flippy ring? I don't remember. But that was often one of the things I would do is, I would want that ring. So that's another thing. I'm not sure what else you can really do there, because I've just never really done much with that faction.
And at the bottom of the elevator, there's our boy.
Oh, okay.
Happy to see us and ready to peddle his ill-gotten goods. Because not only does he have one of the better gestures in the game, but for a cool 5,000 souls, Shiva will sell you the best fist weapon as well.
Oh, the claw.
The claws.
Okay. And I'm guessing, is that a bleed weapon? Because bleed weapons are strong, at least against enemies that bleed.
So long as you have at least 14 dexterity, you now have the last fist weapon you'll need in your hands.
Okay.
Why? Simple, really. It's just better. It has B scaling with dexterity, does bleed damage, and has better reach than the cestus by a long shot.
And actually, that's interesting. One of the things that I do find interesting, because of it's a fist weapon, and it's going to do lower damage on average per hit, you'll actually get to see the bleed effect a lot more than you would with a typical weapon. Because, a big thing that a lot of people like is katanas, because they have bleed. Bleed is a fun mechanic in Souls games. Just because it's after a while you just do a huge chunk of damage to an enemy. But honestly, even like with katanas, they do high enough damage that you don't get to see it as much as you would like. So that's actually probably a fun thing to do, is to use the claw and actually like just see the actual damage being done.
The moveset is relatively similar, as is the attack speed, so there's no real changes there, outside of the strong attack being a wide swipe instead of a straight punch. The left-hand moveset doesn't
And I was looking at it, looks like the stamina cost is about the same as the Cestus as well.
have much going on, consisting of a simple swipe and a parry, but there is one weird part of the claw's moveset, the roll attack. It has you roll again, then lunge out with your claws.
Huh.
Very strange addition to an otherwise normal moveset. I'm almost positive the extra roll doesn't have any iframes, so its only purpose is a little extra distance and a thrusting attack.
Yeah, I'm wondering why they would implement that, because having an extra roll just seems like it would kind of throw off your timing more than anything.
I have a love-hate relationship with this particular move. More often than not, it threw me off my rhythm. 9 times out of 10,
exactly.
I just wanted to dodge an attack, then do a normal swipe, and instead ended up rolling further into my enemy, putting me in a bad position.
Yeah, and I will say that one thing that would happen in my runs a lot is I would tend to use roll attacks quite a bit just for that exact reason of wanting to dodge an attack and then do a strike itself. But also if I was fighting a boss where I'd want to kind of do the hit and run thing, I would get out of the way of an attack or get into a position where I would have a little bit of distance and then close that distance with a roll attack. So, they do tend to become an important part of my own damage rotation. But yeah, with an awkward one like that would really throw me off.
But if you dodge roll away from an enemy and then attack, it actually works really well, letting you
True.
dodge the attack and quickly follow up to get you right back in the fight. Not useful all the time, but very good in specific situations.
Okay.
That Stray Demon fight was with a completely unupgraded claw, by the way. Bleed OP. Considering
Yeah,
this
Bleed's
weapon
really
will likely
good.
be our bread and butter for the rest of the run.
Well, Bleed's really good at least against Bleed vulnerable targets, because there are plenty of enemies in the game, including bosses, that are not able to be bled. So that is a thing to consider. Just kind of like with again, when I was doing my own challenge runs, the one I ended up kind of stopping on, which I never ended up finishing, was the Quelaag sword, the one made with Quelaag's soul, which is I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one that does like all fire damage. Really good against most enemies, except ironically Quelaag herself, because she is like immune to fire. Meaning that when I was fighting her, I was doing like the base damage of the weapon, which was almost nothing because most of its damage is in fire. So that's a thing with that is a bit of an issue with Dark Souls 1 in particular, where a lot of weapons are really good under the right circumstances, but are almost useless if they lean too heavily into one specific thing. Like, for example, the claw has bleed. If an enemy can't be bled, it's going to be a lot more of a slog to fight it with a weapon like the claw.
We give it the attention it deserves, then go about the early game clearing up any bosses we missed. Unfortunately for us, the bleed damage is usually just a boon against enemies, not bosses, because a frustrating number of Dark Souls bosses are immune to status effects.
Yep.
But with the souls we get from here on out pumped into dexterity, hopefully the claw's scaling will be enough to make up the difference. Sadly, this level of resistance is going to be the norm from here on out. In regards to the rest of the build, there's not a whole lot we can add to it to make it better. There's very few rings that help it along, and there's only one piece of equipment that boosts fist weapon damage. But that's all the way in the second half of the game, and isn't worth thinking about just yet. For now, your only mission in life is to pump dexterity and push through the game as fast as you can.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it's probably not a fun time to fight Havel with a fist weapon. Okay, so I don't know how the thing deals poise damage relative to the Cestus, because I know the Cestus, the whole thing is that it does a lot of poise damage. I wonder if the claw does less. I wouldn't be surprised, because it's meant to be a slashing weapon essentially, and does bleed damage as opposed to being a concussive force. But also Havel just in general has a lot of poise. It's hard to stagger him. And I mean, that's what his armor is known for. His armor is known for being, like, making you practically immune to getting staggered. Not completely immune, but it's hard to get staggered in Havel's armor. So the one strength of a fist weapon, that being the stagger potential, is actually just completely irrelevant fighting him. So even though he's not a hard enemy, he's not even a full boss, fighting him with a fist weapon's got to be a pain in the ass.
task on paper, but a bit harder than you'd think in practice. You know, the more I use this weapon type, the more I remember how unbalanced Dark Souls 1 was.
Yep.
Weapon types just aren't made equal.
Yeah, I absolutely love Dark Souls 1, but it is true that it is not the most well-balanced game. It is... There are issues with it, even things that are just objectively bad. Like, for example, I really hate the runbacks in Dark Souls 1. Love Dark Souls 1 to bits. I fucking hate the fact that so much of the game, like... For a game that's designed around you kind of continuously throwing yourself against an enemy until you eventually figure out how to beat it and actually execute on that, having to run back like 90 seconds, which ends up being a glorified respawn timer, is not conducive to that mindset. Which is why, I never finished Elden Ring, which is something I do plan to do in the future. But the fact that Elden Ring would have these temporary respawns right outside the boss rooms, excellent quality of life feature.
And fist weapons definitely needed more time in the oven. But I promised to show you how to beat the game with fist weapons, and while it won't be easy, hopefully the next few steps will help make it easier. And our first step here is to make sure you're human and get invaded by Kirk down in the depths.
Yeah, I don't remember, because he does drop the spiky stuff. I don't remember exactly how that works, but I remember there was gonna be a phantom that was gonna be relevant here.
Sorry, old sport, but this won't be the last time I humiliate you on screen. The next step is to talk to Domhnall. Hi, Shawaim. Domhnall here sells a very important item, the gold pine resin. It's a bit pricey at 1,000 a pop, and he only holds 3. But these are a dramatic upgrade to our charcoal pine resin.
And that's one thing I also will mention about Dark Souls challenge runs in particular, because when you specialize so hard, a lot of times you do kind of end up with a bit of a glut in souls. So you're able to kind of spend the souls on things that are not necessarily super viable in a regular run, because gold pine resin, again, while it is a very useful consumable, it adds a lot of damage. It's also expensive and something you can't necessarily maintain, especially if you're doing like a first run and you're still kind of feeling out all the enemies, because if you're gonna be dying a bunch of times against a boss because you aren't familiar with its attack patterns, you just don't have the muscle memory to fight it at that point, you can't really maintain having gold pine resin for every attempt, because you're gonna run out, not gonna have the souls to actually upkeep that, and also just going back and forth to a vendor all the time isn't super viable. Even after Ornstein and Smo, when you have the Lord Vessel and can actually teleport, it's still not going to be super viable to do that, because annoyingly, a lot of merchants are a decent amount away from actual teleport spots.
Sadly, there's only 4 ways to get it. There's 3 hidden in a chest in the Undead Burg, the 3 we can buy off Domhnall, and 5 that you can buy from Elizabeth the Mushroom Lady all the way in the DLC.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize that they were as scarce as they are, because again, I never really used a whole lot of gold pine resin. I would just kind of use the ones that I found in the chest, basically. But yeah, I don't know why. I kind of assumed that gold pine resin was something you could buy in infinite quantities, just that it was expensive. I guess I just never had bought out the shop before.
But the only unlimited way to get more is to farm, of all things, mushrooms. Specifically the big ones. There's an 80% chance that they'll drop 1, and a 20% chance that they'll drop 2.
Oh,
that's
I didn't know that.
Probably the most generous drop rate I've ever seen in a Dark Souls game.
Yeah, really.
Now you can kill the little ones too, if you're feeling particularly vindictive.
And I will say, he mentioned generous drop rates. Honestly, I felt that in my soul, just because I'm just thinking about all the times I would kill the things in New Londo. I don't remember what they're called, but for that last Titanite slab to upgrade stuff, it's the amount of times I've spent grinding there just to get that one drop, even at max drop rate chance. It pains me to my soul. So I feel the generous drop rate. I can vicariously feel relief from that.
But they've only got a 5% chance of dropping 1 pine resin, so I wouldn't waste your time.
Lemon, you motherfucker, what are you doing to these mushroom babies?
Babs, what the hell are you doing here?
Come ti permetti? So stronzo! Pezzo di merda, coglione che non sei alto, ma cosa fai?
Oh god! That Italian accent's so bad, but I love it. That makes it so much better, actually.
Crazed Italian woman breaking into your home aside, these resins are well worth the effort to get
Che
them.
cosa fai?
Much like the charcoal pine resins, they add a flat lightning damage to your weapon. But unlike the charcoals, it's a flat 150 lightning.
Oh, they hit hard. Yeah, I forgot about how hard that. Because usually I just run past these guys. I don't really engage with them. So I didn't remember that they hit as hard as they did.
For 1 minute instead of 80. And considering a good number of bosses in the game are weak to lightning, that's a big deal. As an example, the Gaping Dragon takes 91 damage when you use fire damage against it, but 166 when using lightning.
Yeah, that's a big
Quite
increase.
the jump in damage.
I can't remember. Is lightning another flat damage modifier? Because that actually does impact things a lot. As he mentioned earlier, the flat damage does disproportionately benefit a weapon with fast attack speed. So, but also, even if it is percentage based, the weaknesses to lightning are significant here.
And with that new bit of damage added to our arsenal, we're officially at the point in the run where we just need to push. Thankfully, most of the bosses from here on out don't move all that much, which means you can just empty your entire stamina bar into them more often than not.
Okay.
And with the 2 Bells of Awakening rung, it's time to push on to the halfway point of the game.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely you want the gold pine resin here instead of the charcoal powder, just because Quelaag is immune to fire, which is annoying when you have a fire-based weapon, which, again, Quelaag's sword is the one I ended up stopping with when I was doing my challenge runs. And this was a very obnoxious fight.
I take a quick detour to poke fun at Ceaseless Discharge, because why not?
Yep, and that is the correct way to fight Ceaseless Discharge, by the way. I know some people think, oh, it's not really killing Ceaseless Discharge if you use the strat to knock him off the ledge, but it is not a good boss fight the standard way. So I have no problem with anybody killing him that way. But that's also the canon way he dies. So in future games, that is how he canonically died. So it's fine.
And immediately face the karma of my actions when I realized I didn't deal with Lautrec before ringing both bells.
Ooh.
And I forgot to get chocolate chips when I was at the store. God, what a day.
I have done that. I have forgotten to do the Lautrec stuff. Although, by the end of the time I stopped playing Dark Souls, that was no longer really a concern, just because I would always kind of make sure to go out of my way to deal with Lautrec, just because the FAP ring is such a good early ring. I mean, eventually you do end up swapping it out for something else and therefore breaking it, but early on, it's such a good ring. I would never want to not have it in the early game.
Aisha Wimes at Firelink now, which is nice, but unfortunately his moving doesn't give him any new inventory. So Mushroom Murder and Babs of Beatdowns are still a prominent pillar of my future. But there's one other thing we need to do on the way to Anor Londo. If we make a quick stop across the gap here, we can talk to the Crestfallen Merchant here and buy a Green Titanite shard. For later, you understand.
So I wonder... Oh, actually, okay. I'm trying to think of what he's going to upgrade, because Green Titanite allows you to take either the Magic Fire or Divine Path. I'm not sure what he's going to do, because personally in my challenge runs, I would always try to get a duplicate and then make it Divine just for the Nito section of the run, just because while I could deal with Nito without that, just being able to kill his skeletons and keep them dead, I didn't want to deal with them respawning all the time, so that's how I always did my runs. I'm wondering if he's going to do the same thing, or if there's going to be a particular weakness that a boss has that he's going to exploit. I'm curious.
There, it's just your typical / that we're used to. It's not much, but it's honest work. And with the Iron Golem dead, we've actually just found the first piece to our next weapon. So please don't pop that boss soul just yet. After getting distracted in the painted world trying to breed Priscilla, bleed Priscilla. Jesus, way to go, Lemon. The cops are gonna have a real field day with that one.
Yeah, honestly, understandable. Priscilla is waifu.
I decided to skip straight to Ornstein and Smo, because why not? Smo is very susceptible to bleed damage, making him a very easy target. As for Ornstein, he too could be bled, so it's just a matter of taking your time, though in retrospect, it probably would have been easier to kill Ornstein first, and Smo second.
I mean, it usually is, just because Ornstein, by nature of him being so much faster than Smo, and being able to kind of do the dash to traverse the gaps between you. I mean, in my runs, I would usually kill Ornstein first just because he tended to be the one I was nearby more often. And also, Smo is pretty easy. Like, his AI is not perfect. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you can kind of run straight at him to make him disproportionately likely to do his leap attack. And if you're sprinting straight at him, his leap attack will miss. So that is another factor of why I do think generally second phase Smo is easier to deal with than second phase Ornstein.
Ah well, a first try is a first try. But with ONS dead, it's time to focus on our next weapon, the Dragonbone Fist. Made from a +10 fist weapon and the Iron Golem's soul, this thing is... look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this thing is a complete waste of time. Not only do you need 20 strength to even wield the damn thing, but it takes dragon scales to upgrade. Yup, that old chestnut.
Yeah, and that is another thing I regret about Dark Souls 1, is that a lot of the boss weapons, while they are cool as fuck, they are just not worth the investment to actually get them and to upgrade them, because they are, you have to have a boss soul to forge them. A lot of times it doesn't work out. Although I will say the scythe that you can get from Priscilla's soul, my favorite weapon in the game. I absolutely love that weapon to death. I don't care if it's not good in a lot of circumstances. I don't care if you have to manage your health with it. It is so much fun to use. I love that weapon to death. It's my favorite weapon in the game. Even if it's not good, I don't care. But yeah, a lot of boss weapons are really cool, not worth the time to invested to actually get them and upgrade them. And also, they suffer from a lot of the problems that other items in the game have, is that the point at which you get them kind of is after the point it would find the most usefulness.
Now you could try to farm the baby drakes in the valley, but these things have just as bad a hitbox as their adult brother up in the Undead Burg, and trying to grind out the 5% drop chance with claws is just... yeah. But there's another way. If you really want to upgrade your dragon weapon, there's actually 10 dragon scales hidden around the world. The first is here in Blighttown, the second can be traded with Snuggly the Crow with an egg vermifuge.
Again, I never really used a whole lot of these, and that's another thing. Whenever there's going to be something with Snuggly, I never really am super aware of that, just because there's only been a handful of things I know about to trade with him. Because it's not super clear in game. It's one of those things you have to look up to know what it's doing.
Which you can find in the Painted World or get from Eggman and Quelaag's domain. And the third can also be found in the Painted World, although you'll need to peel that one off a dragon to get it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's the last of the easy scales to get, because after that,
Hydra?
you need to head to Ash Lake to take on the Hydra. This thing sucks to fight on a good day, and doubly so with fist weapons.
Yeah.
It has too much health, and its heads have such shitty hitboxes and wiggly patterns that fighting it is just negative fun.
Yeah, I will say, I never really fought the Hydra in the normal intended way. I would always do the whole thing where I would get a 100% reduction shield and just bait out a lunge attack and then just wail on him while he's recovering. That's always been how I did things.
Yeah, at least it drops 2 scales, I guess.
Well, also, you're going to have to kill it anyway if you're going to be going... I don't know if he's going to go to the DLC or not, but you do have to kill the Hydra if you want to do that.
And with it dead, we can now loot the rest of the area. There's a scale just around the corner that it was guarding, another scale hidden inside the nearby log, and one more tucked away over the ash dune just past the man-eater clams. After that, you'll need to kill the dragon in the Valley of Drakes, but due to its position, you'll need some strategy to do it.
Yeah, this one is an annoying fight. Like, it is more annoying than this type of dragon should be, because, these are usually not that bad, but this one in particular is always... I found this one to be always an annoying fight at best.
Personally, I found it easiest to stand back just out of reach directly in front of it, which lured out the poison breath attack, then ran up to his hand and hit it 3 times before running back to my starting position to complete the loop. Repeat ad nauseum, and enjoy your spoils.
Yeah, that's one thing I've also noticed about Dark Souls 1 is that a lot of the AI can be exploited in ways like this. As I mentioned, like with Smo, you can oftentimes just run straight at him to bait out his leaping attack. There are a lot of enemies where if you just kind of get the right distance, you can definitely influence it to do certain things. And if you can get it to do a certain attack when you want it to, then you can, use the time they spend in that animation to hurt them.
The last scale is in the Dark Root Basin, inside another Hydra. Thankfully, this one has a lot less health than the previous Hydra, but if you can't do enough damage to kill it outright, you'll be stuck trying to cut off its final head.
Yeah.
You know the one. Annoying, but doable.
Yeah,
And with it dead, that's
I don't
10
like
scales.
That. Okay, and I will mention, I was talking about the Hydra from earlier. I was thinking of the wrong Hydra. This is the Hydra, I believe, that you need to be able to do the DLC. So, I mean, he was going to have to kill both anyway, just for the scales, but yeah, this is what I was talking about. He had to kill it anyway.
No farming needed. And now to show you all why that was a complete waste of time. Not only is its moveset slower than other fist weapons, but the weapon itself is 8 times heavier, which means your entire build has to be rebalanced.
Yeah, because again, for those who aren't familiar with Dark Souls, you want to keep your equipment load at 25% of your max or less, because that'll let you light roll. And fast rolling gives you the most iframes. And generally speaking, you don't want to be doing anything but light rolling or fast rolling, I should say, unless you're like wearing Havels and your whole point is that you're going to shrug off damage anyway. Because again, that is another thing that's not super well explained in Dark Souls. Dark Souls does suffer from a lot of information issues. They don't tell you all the things you need to know. But yeah, if it's a heavy weapon, that's actually going to mess with your entire build.
But Lemon, what about the Shoryuken attack? Yes, I know it exists, but it really shouldn't. It does a paltry amount of damage for the amount of stamina and time it takes to use.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, it does do not great damage, but Rule of Cool applies, I think. It is cool enough that it doesn't matter if it doesn't do a lot of damage, you use it anyway.
And I guarantee that most enemies will knock you out of the animation before you can do it anyway. What's worse, it simply can't outdamage my claws. The base damage is less than my claws base damage at plus 10. And while it does have S scaling with strength, I can tell you that even max stats wouldn't carry it to victory in the long run. Combine that with the aforementioned attack speed, weight, and difficulty.
Yeah, and that looks like the claws have, I mean, it compared to the S scaling and strength, B scaling and dexterity is not that much worse, all things considered. Plus, it also has some scaling and strength as well. But yeah, again, that's what I was saying earlier, is that a lot of times boss weapons just aren't good. Dark Souls 1 really isn't super well balanced, and I think boss weapons are one area that suffers because of it.
Upgrade materials, and it's a meme weapon through and through. But hey, at least we can put that green Titanite to use and make our Cestus divine.
Okay, so he is doing what I thought he was going to do, or what I would do in that circumstance, which is to get a divine weapon, probably just for the Nito fight specifically, because fuck those skeletons he summons. Everybody hates those skeletons.
It won't be very strong, but it'll help keep our Nito fight nice and tidy later on.
Exactly.
But with that thrown in the bottom of our junk box, we've got one more weapon to look at. The Dark Hand. There's 2 ways to get one, and neither of them are particularly fun. But if we take care to kill Sif before placing the Lord Vessel, and then head to New Londo to drain the lake, we can begin our next grind.
Oh,
Dark Wraiths.
Yeah, Dark Wraiths. That's the enemy I was talking about earlier. Grinding those is never a fun time, but if you want to effectively get your weapons maxed out, that's what you got to do.
Their drop table consists of 3 things: Titanite chunks, Titanite slabs, and the Dark Hand itself. They're not particularly hard to fight, though you'll probably want to get good at parrying to make the most of your time.
Yeah, and the Dark Hand is a pretty rare drop too, so that's always that's not one I've ever grinded for specifically, but I wouldn't want to because of the drop rates.
Beware the fact that they hunt in groups. Just a word of advice. If you're having trouble with the drop, don't worry. There's another way to guarantee that we get one, but you're not gonna like it. Oh hey, how about that? Guess I don't have to do option 2 anymore. Problem solved. Oh god, I have to do option 2 for the sake of footage, don't I?
Yep.
Alright, fine, but you all owe me for this one. Make sure to grab the very large ember, and upgrade your claws to plus 15.
Okay, and I will say another thing is, well, I'm sure that he is actually doing the things for the sake of the video, and I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of what he's doing was on stream, which makes sense. Might as well get 2 for 1 as in terms of effort there. But if you're just doing it for video footage, this is one of those areas where I think it's kind of okay to cheat just to get the footage. No reason to waste your time. It's kind of like when people doing Pokemon runs do like the rare candy for Nuzlocke or you speed up and stuff like that. I don't have a problem with it if it's for the sake of good video footage and not wasting your time.
You'll need all the damage you can get, because the next step is fighting the Four Kings.
Oh yeah, and the Four Kings are another fun one because they're definitely a DPS race, or the challenge of the Four Kings is greatly dependent on your DPS. Because, if you have enough DPS, you can actually get the Four Kings dead in 3 cycles. Because you can actually, because they have a shared health pool, and you can continue damaging them while they're in their death animation. So if you have a really high damage weapon, you can damage them enough that only 3 will end up needing to spawn. However, if you have low DPS, multiple will end up spawning, and you can sometimes even have 5 end up spawning just because you don't do enough damage. So, the Claw seems to have decent-ish DPS on its own. I don't think the Four Kings can bleed. I don't remember, though. So this is probably a pretty rough fight with this particular run.
It's time for a DPS race. Even with gold pine resin, this fight sucks ass. Your DPS is low, your reach is worse than usual because of how hard it is to tell distance in the abyss.
And I will also say that, in my experience, these are harder attacks than usual to dodge. Granted, I usually just went with the strategy of out DPSing them and then just having a powerful shield to tank a lot of the attacks because I just didn't want to deal with it. But yeah, Four Kings, they're a rough fight. And I could never consistently get dodging the magic attacks. For whatever reason, I just never figured out the timing of that one.
And your stats are probably lower than usual due to fighting the Four Kings so early. This can be mitigated somewhat by using Havel's armor and just tanking through the fight, but still,
yeah, that's an option.
Not a great time. How people used to kill this boss at low levels so they could join the Dark Wraiths early and invade new players in Undead Parish is beyond me. But with the Four Kings dead, we find a hidden NPC, Koth the Serpent.
Oh yeah.
Not only does this NPC drop atomic-sized lore bombs about the true nature of the Dark Soul and humanity's past, which is actually pretty freaking awesome when you think about how many players have probably never seen this character before.
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's one of those. This is an enemy that you, not an enemy, an NPC that a lot of people wouldn't even know he exists, like without, because you're not gonna stumble upon him naturally for the most part, because you kind of have to go not out of order, but in a way that's not super natural, because again, you gotta kind of go after the Four Kings at a specific time before you do other stuff, which can be, there's a lot of really cryptic stuff about Dark Souls. Really cool from a content creation perspective, really cool from a lore perspective, but a pain in the ass from an actual player perspective.
But he also lets you join the Dark Wraith Covenant, which gives you a free Dark Hand just for joining. What a great guy. He still eats you though. Not sure why that's a staple in the Primordial Serpent lore, but, So, with that done, let's take a look at our new toy. And right away, you're probably seeing some red flags. It does a whopping 200 damage right from the start, and has 999 durability, but don't let that fool you.
And no scaling,
you'll
though.
Also notice it has no scaling.
Yep.
What's worse, it can't be upgraded, so that 200 damage is all you get. If you place it in your left hand, you do get a little bit more weapon variety, with it acting as a shield of some kind.
That is
but it
kinda
should be
cool.
noted that the shield has no deflection, which means your enemies won't bounce when they hit you. The other unique thing
that's
about this
interesting. I didn't
weapon
know that.
is that the strong attack is a grab, and when used against NPCs or invaders, will suck the humanity right out of them.
Yeah, I did know about that, because it is largely a PvP weapon, or not necessarily a PvP weapon, but like the idea is that you can farm humanities with it. And one of the ways to do that is to do it against players, even though, again, that's not super viable, considering PvP combat is not as predictable as PvE combat, but yeah. There's a reason you get it when joining the PvP Covenant.
Thankfully, this doesn't make them aggressive,
one of the PvP
so if you're
covenants.
low on humanity, this is a viable option.
Okay.
But it doesn't...
I didn't realize that it didn't give you, that it didn't aggro the NPCs, because I've never really used it myself. I kind of assumed that shoving your hand into a person's chest and ripping the humanity out of them would, I would imagine it would piss most people off. It would probably piss me off, and I'm pretty slow to anger. So, I guess I just assumed it would aggro the NPCs, so I never really thought of using it myself.
Doesn't do anything against actual enemies, though. So keep that in mind. As I discovered in my Dark Hand only run a while back, it's one of those weapons that's amazing if you use it in the early game, but drops off hard in the late game. Still manages to keep up with the +5 Dragonbone Fist, though. God, that's upsetting. But with the Lord Vessel placed, there's only one more thing we can do to upgrade our build. I hinted at it before, but the last thing left to do
Yeah.
is to kill Kirk.
Yeah, Kirk
Again.
has some cool stuff.
After that, you just need to bleed down the fire sage, mash the attack button underneath the centipede demon until it stops wriggling.
Yeah, I gotta say, this whole section of the game, the whole Lost Izalith section, this is such a cool area. It's a shame that it's as unfinished as it is. You could definitely tell that the first half of Dark Souls 1 is so much better balanced, so much more curated than the second half, and Izalith in particular is an area that is just, I think, suffered from a rushed finish. That part of me wonders what Dark Souls 1 could have looked like if a lot of the game actually got like the same level of attention as the first half of the game.
Then run your happy ass into the depths of Lost Izalith, where you'll murder one of the last normal witches that exists, then give Kirk one more stab for good measure. And once he's realized that he cannot, in fact, beat you, he'll completely hollow and die for good. Which means we can now loot that body. Just head on down to Quelaag's domain, just past the lady's bonfire, and you'll find his armor. But more importantly, you'll find his gauntlets.
Yeah, the gauntlets
And
of
these
thorns.
gauntlets have a hidden property. When worn, fist weapons do an extra 20 damage.
Yep.
I know, right? And don't worry, that 20 damage is affected by enemy defense, and doesn't apply to critical hits, the red tearstone ring, or any other damage formula.
Huh. I assume I mean I knew about these gauntlets beforehand. I just assumed they just added straight to your flat damage or your base damage. I didn't realize it wasn't affected by modifiers, or it wasn't affected by positive damage modifiers. It is affected by enemy damage mitigators. I didn't realize that. Still, it's an upgrade still, but for how late in the game that you end up getting this and how much there actually goes into getting these, I assumed they would be better than that.
Can't have fist weapons getting too overpowered, right? Sheesh, what a crock-a-pot. This poor weapon class just can't catch a break. And to be fair to Dark Souls' balance, I don't think it was ever supposed to. Due to their light weight and quick attack speed, I feel like fists were supposed to be that second weapon you hid in your back pocket. Probably designed around PvP more than anything else. Don't get me
That
wrong,
wouldn't
the
surprise
claws
me.
certainly hold their own, and feel like the most developed weapon of the bunch. They do decent damage, have a range you can adapt to, and the bleed damage comes in handy more often than you'd think.
And I mean, I think you might be attributing a little bit too much intention to the design of the various weapons, because I do think a lot of the weapons in Dark Souls 1 specifically were just not super well tested. I think they just kind of wanted to have a lot of weapon variety, have weapons scattered throughout the game that you can obtain throughout the game, and just a lot of them ended up being underpowered or just not properly balanced for the point in the game that you get them. With the example, like I mentioned before, was the boss weapons, where most of the boss weapons are just not worth the investment to get them, not worth the investment to upgrade them, and oftentimes are obtained past the point where their usefulness would shine. Not bad for New Game Plus runs, of course, but again, a lot of the weapons in the game just aren't properly balanced. Fist weapons are probably in that category. I don't know that they were necessarily meant for PvP. They could have been, though.
But when you compare them to other weapons, it
Okay,
just
he
kind
is
of
doing
falls
the
apart.
DLCs.
That roll attack does have its place in faster, dodge-filled combat, though. While it was mostly a hindrance in other boss fights, against Artorias, it finally felt useful.
That is actually a good point, where a lot of, I will say, Artorias is one of the few enemies I think where a fast attack speed is a lot of a big boon, because I'm the kind of player who I would always take a heavy damage dealing weapons, because usually I would kind of only get 1 or 2 hits in at a time for most bosses. Artorias is the one where there are certain attacks I couldn't even punish just because of how fast his attacks are. But if I had a faster weapon like a claw or something like that, then I could do things that I couldn't necessarily do with a Zweihander.
Letting me dodge attacks and get right back into the fight. Again, I feel like this reinforces the idea that fist weapons are a PvP weapon more than anything else. But I'm also just
Maybe.
one man with one experience. For all I know, I'm overlooking some key element to the fist weapons that makes them amazing. And it wouldn't be the first time. So if that's the case, please let me know.
Okay, and that's also interesting that he's using the pendant to deflect the Menace's blast attack. Because I'll be honest, I never really found that to be useful. I could never get the timing down. I found it a lot easier to just dodge it normally. Like, I never found it to be that hard to actually dodge. So I'm not, I don't know. The Silver Pendant just never seemed to be that useful to me. but I understand I'm a little weird.
But if you ask me, this weapon type should be used for niche circumstances only. Creating an entire build around it does not make for an easy, or more importantly, fun time.
And that is another thing where I think Dark Souls 1, if the balance was a little bit different, the way the game is kind of designed makes it hard to have weapons for niche circumstances, because it kind of really incentivizes, just with the whole soul economy and the way your stats work and all that stuff, it just kind of incentivizes putting everything into one weapon or one weapon type. And even if there would be an instance where, hey, say have a special bleed weapon for an enemy that's weak to bleed, have a fire weapon for enemies that are weak to fire, having these different options for different circumstances sounds great in theory, but you just don't have the souls to really maintain that, and you'd be better off pumping them all into your main damage dealing stuff. And even if it's suboptimal for a boss here and there, you're not going to be able to bring a secondary weapon up to the level that you need in any given circumstance. So that is one area that I think Dark Souls 1 could have shined if the balancing was a little better.
And if you're looking for ways to beat Dark Souls 1, there's plenty of better options out there to try before you resort to this one. Ah well, at least the Hornet Ring riposte animation is brutal as hell. God,
Yeah, that's
I love
cool.
that ring. There is no better feeling than parrying the world, I tell ya. And so, the run comes to an end. Time to give Gwyn what's coming to— oh my god, I forgot Gwyndolin. Yeah. And with Gwyn taking every riposte directly to the face and groin, there you have it. Dark Souls 1 beaten with only fist weapons. Would I recommend fist weapons only? No. But would I recommend...
I still say rule of cool is a factor here. The animations, especially the parry and riposte animations and the backstab animations for fist weapons in particular, are some of the coolest in the game. And I'm the kind of person who I think having a cool animation makes a shitty weapon valuable. I don't care.
Giving them a try and keeping one in your second weapon slot? Sure, why not? The extra poise damage might be just what you need for a particular enemy, and there's nothing quite as spooky as seeing a naked invader barreling at you with a pair of Wolverine claws glued to their hands.
Yeah, there's two types of people in this world. Those who fear having to fight a home intruder naked, and those who intend to.
Hopefully you learned something new today, or at the very least understand the whys and why nots of if you should use fist weapons in Dark Souls 1. And who knows, maybe they'll be better in Dark Souls 2 and 3. Oh god, please help.
Okay. So yeah, that was a good video by, I used to watch the Backlogs quite a lot back in the day. I really enjoyed this video. It was very, very good. Once again, for those watching on stream right now, I'll be leaving a link in the chat. Please do go support the original creator. For those watching on the highlights channel after the fact, I will be leaving a link in the description. Please do go check that out. Support the original creator. Give it a like. Give it some watch time. Subscribe to his channel if you like what he does. I think he's always made very good videos. He's very consistent with with the quality of his videos. If you like Dark Souls stuff and even the other games that he plays, you really can't go wrong with his content. So definitely, I enjoyed that a lot. And so for those watching on the highlights channel, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in a couple days for a new video. Later.